Hello and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about how to install Rockbox on your Hifiwalker H2. And it's pretty self-explanatory, to be honest. All you need to do is follow a lot of the steps from the Rockbox website and you should be good to go. But first you want to go to the Rockbox website itself. I will link this in the description. You can just copy and paste it into your browser, or you can just search up Rockbox and it should be the first result. And because you have the Hifiwalker H2 and because you're trying to install Rockbox, you want to go under AGO arrows Q / arrows K because they're basically the same thing. It's a bit confusing, but they are basically the same thing, but just ever so slightly different. I'll get to that later. First, you want to decide if you want to go hosted or native. I'd recommend for most people just go native. It's the simplest way to do it. It's the preferred way to do it by Rockbox themselves, and it's the version that has a stable release on it. So just go to native. I'd recommend for like everybody. So yeah, if you need to boot into the original firmware, you can press play plus power or to boot into the bootloader menu. But I would think most people don't really need to do this after they figure it out. So Rockbox utility, unfortunately, is not a thing for the H2 yet. So you will have to manually install it. And this is where some people can get tripped up. That's why I got some comments on my H2 video saying they were confused and don't know how to install Rockbox. So that's why I'm making this video in the first place. So first of all, you need to figure out what version your H2 is. In order to do this, I had to go under system settings about this player. I don't remember the exact submenu I went under after about this player, but I don't think it was under version for me personally. It could be different from player to player. But yeah, for me, I just dug around in about this player or about the player under system settings, and I eventually just found the firmware version. And once you do that, you go under this chart here and you want to download the update file that you need to run the bootloader in order to run Rockbox, in order to run the firmware. So you will just need to find what version you have and then find the corresponding version and then download the update file through Rockbox itself. You just click there and then it should just download like that. So after you do that, you then want to place the update file onto your SD card that you have for your H2. And you want to do this on the SD card you plan to put all your music on. You can't do it on a separate SD card. You have to put all your Rockbox files on the SD card that you have with all your music on it. So you want to basically take that update file you just got, and then you want to plug in your H2 via a USB-C cable. I would recommend for most people. And then you want to get that update file, just copy it over, and then you want to rename it exactly to how it is here. Just update.upt. In order to see the file extension, you can go under View on Windows and then just file name extensions if you need to. If you don't want to go through the hassle, you can just right click it and then go to Properties, and it should just say the, or just hover over it. That's probably easiest. And it'll just say the update or the type of file it is, and that you should be able to tell that you've done it correctly, because again, you just need to rename it exactly how it is here. Just all lowercase, update.upt as the file extension, and then you should be good to go for this step at least. And then once you do that, you want to run recovery mode. And in order to do this, you want to go into system settings and then firmware update. And then it'll ask you if you want to run recovery mode, and then you just press yes, and it will try to install Rockbox through the self-installed bootloader. However, it will fail once it reboots because you do not have the firmware installed on your H2 yet, but this is expected, and you will have to install the Rockbox firmware separately. There also is another bootloader installation method that's separate from this first method I just showed, but I didn't do that. I went with method 1 and then what's said down here. So I didn't go through this method. If you want to go through an alternative method, you can, but I'm just saying how I did it. So first, or not first, well, first for this part, you want to make sure that your SD card is formatted with FAT32. So you might actually want to do this before you even put the update file on your SD card in the first place. You might just want to format it in the first place. I'm not sure if the order matters, whether or not you put the update file and then format it and then put the firmware on it, or if you can just format it in the first place and then put the update file and the firmware on it. Again, I don't know what the order is, but I did it by putting the update file on it first and then formatting it, putting the update file back into that into the H2, and then putting the firmware on it. So I know it's a bit convoluted, but I hope you could follow along with me there. So this should be pretty simple though. All you need to do is format it into FAT32, which you can do through the player itself actually. You don't even need to plug it into your computer. You can do this through Windows, but I'd recommend not doing it because I'm pretty sure formatting it through FAT32, it will have a file limit, a file size limit on Windows at least. But with FAT32, by formatting it through the player itself, it will not have this limit, at least to my knowledge. It just doesn't have a file transfer limit, so it'll transfer everything you really need to perfectly fine. So in order to do this, you just put the micro SD card you have into the player. With the player off, if you install that update file first, which again I did this, I did the update file first. So if you install that update file first, it's no big deal, no biggie. You could just hold the play button while powering it on once you boot it up. After shutting it down first, of course, and then it will boot into the original firmware that the H2 came with. And then you want to go under System Settings, Reset, and then Format TF card or Transfer card, which is basically the same thing as a micro SD. And then you want to say yes to format. It will format to FAT32 specifically. There's no other formatting options you have, but it will again format to the correct format because it does need this specific one to work. At least to my knowledge, I don't think there's any other format where it will detect the files. It has to be FAT32. So make sure you do this. I think this is honestly one of the most important steps for installing the Rockbox firmware. But after you do this, it should be pretty easy. You got past the hard part, for the most part at this point. So now all you need to do is just install the Rockbox build for your specific device, which if you're watching this video is probably going to be H2. So you can just click this link. It'll list all the necessary information you need for your specific device. And because you have the Hifiwalker H2, aka the AGO Arrows Q/K, you can just download the firmware from here by clicking this link. And then after you do that, it will just download here and it'll be a zip file. So in order to get the firmware onto the H2, you just simply have to unzip this zip file by opening it up through like WinRAR or whatever like extractor tool you have. I think Windows has like a built-in zip extractor as well. And then you just need to extract it onto your computer. And after you do that, all you need to do is just put it onto the SD card that you plan to put Rockbox on for your H2. And then after that, it should be pretty self-explanatory. You can just unplug it, and then it should just work after you reboot it, and it'll just boot into Rockbox as long as you have that update file as well on the H2. And again, if you have the update file already on the H2, before you format it, I'd recommend, before formatting the H2 actually, I'd recommend plugging in the H2, removing that update file if you feel the need to. You can also just download the update file. Again, it doesn't really matter either way. And then reformatting it, and then putting the update file back onto the H2. And then going through that process through method 1 again if you need to. I didn't need to, I don't think. All I needed to do was just put the firmware file onto the H2, and then it just automatically booted into Rockbox, and that's all I needed to do really, and it was as simple as that. So again, pretty easy as long as you just follow the steps. It's a bit convoluted with some of the ordering on the website, but again, as long as you just follow these specific steps down here, it should be pretty simple. And again, this is basically saying what I already told you to do. Just unzip the firmware onto the SD card. I recommend just doing it through like an SD card reader, or just by plugging in the H2 itself and then putting the unzipped file onto it, and then it should be there. If it is hidden, which it could be, it wasn't hidden for me, but it could be hidden for you, you can just go under View and then say show hidden items under here. There's probably another way to do it, but that's the easiest way that I found to show the hidden item extensions, or not extensions, but hidden items if it doesn't show up for you under your downloads folder. So, um, besides that, that is basically the way to install Rockbox. There was one guy that was wondering how to install themes though, so now I will go over that. For those who want like a custom theme, which makes sense because the default one's a bit dated. There's a lot of themes for the H2, which again is basically just the arrows Q/K. It's almost the same thing. So yeah, you just go under themes under Rockbox by going here, and then just by selecting the theme that you think looks good. So I don't know, just sort by rating, by what a lot of people like. I know, very original. And then you can just download this, and then it'll be a zip file. Similar to how it worked before, it'll be another .rockbox file. And actually, for me, when I unzipped this folder, it actually automatically added the files necessary for the custom themes just to that Rockbox file. I think it's because it automatically just replaced the original .rockbox file I had installed without that custom theme. So just kind of forget what I said. Again, you just want to install this. Actually, no. Again, I think it did just automatically add this custom. Forget what I just said before. I think it did just automatically add all the themes, all these files under fonts, under WPS and themes. It just automatically added it to that original Rockbox file I had. I'm sorry for the confusion there, but yeah, I think it did that. If it doesn't do that for you, then all you need to do is just go into here, extract it if you feel the need to. Again, if you have something like WinRAR, you can probably just do that, copy and paste it into the folder, the corresponding folders under your .rockbox file in your H2. And you do this by just going to .rockbox on your H2 itself by plugging it in like usual, and then going under fonts, themes, and WPS, and then just pasting what you need to onto here. God damn, I have a lot of zip files open. But yeah, besides that, that is basically going to be it. Again, if it automatically adds all the necessary files to that original Rockbox folder you had, like I said, before I tried to correct myself when I realized that it did actually do that, I'm pretty sure. Then all you need to do is just go to your downloads folder, copy that .rockbox folder with those newly added files, and then just paste it into the H2 directory, and then it'll just ask you if you want to replace all the files that you have already there. You don't really need to, because all you're doing is just adding those new files in order to get the theme installed with like the new fonts and stuff. So you can just say skip and it'll just automatically add all the new stuff. And then all you need to do is just reboot Rockbox or your H2, and then it'll just show up under your settings, under themes, and then it should be just there, and you can select it as a custom theme. So yeah, again, it's a bit convoluted, a lot more I would say than the firmware, but again, once you get the hang of it, it's really not that difficult. And again, it's still not that convoluted in the grand scheme of things. It just doesn't give you as much direction as it does with like the firmware and stuff. So yeah, besides that, that is basically going to be it. I'm sorry this video was so long. I could have cut it down a bit and stopped repeating myself, and I'm sorry I did, but yeah, besides that, that is basically going to be it, and I will see you guys later. Goodbye.